to today's Family Connection Point. Today we're in Matthew chapter 26, verses 57 through 75, and we're talking about our identity. And we're actually going to use name tags to start our conversation. I'm going to ask my kids, what are name tags used for? These are from some conferences. Many times, name tags are just used to identify who you are, where you're from, maybe what your job title is. They put all that information on the front. And so they're used to kind of tell who you are. Well, the question is, who are we? And what happens is, many times, our children and even us find our identity in what others say about us. And what we want to help our children to understand is that their identity shouldn't be found in what their friends say about them, or even what bullies might say about them at school. They shouldn't be found in their mistakes that they've made in the past. They should be found in what Christ says about them. See, what happens many times is our kids start hearing things, and maybe they're negative things like, man, you're so dumb, or you're a cheater, or maybe even some mistakes that they've made. They start dwelling on those things. Maybe even they've heard it from their parents. Man, you're so lazy. And they start hearing these things, and they start identifying with them and living in concert with them, because they've heard it so many times where they think, well, maybe this is who I am. Well, no, they are not who others say they are. They are who Jesus says they are. And so we want them to understand what Christ has to say about them. We want them to live in that identity and not in the identity that the world tries to press on them. So in our passage today, we see two people being asked about their identity, and we see two different answers. We see Jesus and Peter. Jesus has been captured, and he's put on this fake, just phony, jacked up trial. In the middle of the night, they gather the Sanhedrin. They go to Caiaphas' house, the high priest. Somehow Peter makes his way into the courtyard, and they start questioning Jesus, and they actually start bringing false witnesses in to make accusations, but they're all lies. And no one can agree with each other, and so they can't be validated. And so finally they find two people who agree with each other, and this is their accusation. They say, Jesus said that he would tear down the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well, Jesus did say that. Jesus said that in conjunction with his death, burial, and resurrection. But they ask him, hey, Jesus, what do you have to say about this? And he doesn't answer them. You see, Jesus wasn't charged with anything. He didn't have to answer anything. Finally, they ask him, well, tell us if you're the Christ. And Jesus said, yeah, I'm going to be seated at the right hand of the Father, coming with him in the clouds in the air. And this was a clear message that he was the Messiah, and that it was a clear claim to his deity. And this made the high priest bonkers. In fact, he tore his robe, which was actually forbidden by the law, and he said, hey, we don't need any more witnesses. We got everything we need. This is blasphemy. This is it. We don't need to hear any more from this guy. And they had Jesus right where they wanted him. They had something that they could condemn him with. Well, Jesus was right where he wanted to be, because he was doing the Father's will. But they thought they were in control. Take a step to the outside into the courtyard, and then you see Peter being asked a question, and he said, there's a little girl that says, hey, aren't you one of Jesus' followers? And he says, no, you got the wrong guy. Then another girl says, hey, no, you are one of Jesus' followers. And he says, man, I don't even know the guy. Finally, a group of people say, no, you're talking like a Galilean. You are one of his followers. And he actually curses and swears and promises that he doesn't even know the guy. They got the wrong guy. And just then the rooster crows, and he's reminded that Christ had told him that he would deny him 3 times. And one of the other angles, one of the other gospels, we actually see that Jesus turns his gaze at that moment to Peter. They meet eyes, and Peter goes away weeping bitterly. See, what we see here is Peter had an opportunity to claim his identity as a follower of Jesus, and he chose not to. Jesus claimed his clear, true identity as Lord, and he did so. Now, Peter could have allowed this moment to define him. He could have used this label, this shame that was attached to this moment, to actually keep him away from God's true calling for his life. In fact, For a moment, Peter actually went back to fishing, the actual job he had before he met Jesus. But Jesus met him there and reminded him of what his true calling was. He said, Peter, listen, I called you to be a fisher of men. He asked him, Peter, do you love me? And he said, yes. Then you need to feed my sheep. You see, Peter was going to be used to be a rock in what Christ was doing. He was going to be used to be a catalyst for the church. He was going to be used to be a great messenger for the good news of Jesus Christ. And what Peter needed to remember is this: he was not who he was in that moment of questioning with that little girl. He was who Jesus said he was. And Jesus said, you are useful. You are going to be a messenger. He had to put his feelings aside, put maybe what he's heard from other people, maybe what he was telling himself aside, and remind himself of the words of God about himself. And so that's what we want our children to remember today. We want them to know that you are who Jesus says you are. And so what we're going to do with one of these labels, I actually have a clear one here, and we're going to have our kids put their name on the front of this and then write what the Bible says about who they are. And I actually have a list of what the scriptures say about who a Christian is. I'll actually put that here in the post somewhere, and so that you can do this. Maybe you just have a piece of paper, you put their name on the front, and you put some of these Bible verses and some of these thoughts around it. They can hang this up somewhere just to remind themselves who God says they are. Maybe you could put it by the mirror, because this is how God sees them. Not how the world sees them, not how bullies see them, maybe not even how the negative people in their life see them, but this is how God sees them. And we want them to find their identity in who Jesus says they are. That's our lesson for today. I'll see you tomorrow.